Okay, so in this video, we're going to be talking about the current economic events and what it looks like could happen in the first week of March, because the first week of March looks very, very intense. So we're going to go into all of that, but the first thing I want to discuss is that I did this video, this is the last video I did in September of 2020, and it was about, basically I expected that the economy would collapse shortly after the Pluto return, which the Pluto return was on February 19th of 2022, and I suspect that essentially fiat currency is going to be replaced by crypto. Now, it may not happen right now, but the stuff that I discuss in this video makes it seem like it could actually potentially happen right now, or like that there could be some other major events that happen right now, like in March, in the first week of March. So anyways, this video talks about like the Pluto return, which was on February 19th of 2022, and how there are a series of historical events as well, which are unrelated to the Pluto return, but those historical events show a pattern of times when the monetary unit was changed. So as in like whatever it was backed by at the time was suddenly changed. So I went into like Bretton Woods and like the Civil War, and how like they used a lot of those things, or events like that kind of coincided with when they changed what like backed the dollar. So anyways, I would watch this video if you find this current video that I'm filming relevant or interesting, then I would watch this video, just because it talks a lot about like the backstory of why I think that we're gonna have like a change in currency, like in the monetary unit. But anyways, in this video, I talked about February of 2022 as being like the most concerning time. So anyways, another thing that's in this video is I talked about December 21st of 2020, and at the time when I filmed this, I didn't really realize, I mean, it makes sense looking back, but, you know, it's hard to say what exactly will happen, but that happened to be the same date as the first COVID vaccination. And December 21st of 2020 was important because it was the date of the first great, or not the first great, the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. And it's the closest great conjunction to have occurred since like 1623. So ancient astrologers, they really heavily relied on the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn for predicting what would happen in like nations and empires like back in the day. So they used to but they used to watch for the closest conjunctions. They said that the closest conjunctions of Jupiter and Saturn were more prevalent, like more strong, more intense. There's going to be bigger events. So quite appropriately, the closest conjunction since 1623 was on December 21st of 2020, and it also happened to be the day that they chose to administer the first COVID vaccine. Another interesting thing about that is that in 1623, they released this plan for global governance. So that was, you know, interesting. But yeah, that was like basically a sort of like written plan, like kind of proposing the idea for like a one world order, you know, one world government type thing. But yeah, so like that was what happened in 1623, the last time we had a conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn that was this close. And then as you all know, December 21st of 2020, we had the first COVID vaccination, which is also kind of a sort of one world vaccine sort of thing. So think what you will. I won't go into that. But yeah, you know, whatever you want to believe. Yeah. This, if you want to watch it, I'll put the link in the description. But anyways, we'll get on with it. So in that video, I talked about how we were going to have a Pluto return on February 19th of 2022, and how this indicated that it was possible that the U.S. economy might collapse. And the reason why is because Pluto takes 248 years to go full circle. So it has a 248-year orbit. Now, that's not exact, but anyways, I digress. So the U.S. was founded on July 4th of 1776. That's the chart that's set, like the Declaration of Independence, and 248 years later is February 19th of 2022. So anyways, we just had the Pluto return a few days ago, and that was important. But the thing is that it's not quite strong enough to bring about the economic collapse. Like in astrology, you usually need enough other planets to like bring something about, and we're about to have that. So anyways, we'll go into that. But the reason why I thought it would be an economic collapse is because it's in the second house. Now, keep in mind that there's a few different times that have been circulating as far as like what time the U.S. like the Declaration of Independence was like signed and stuff. But the two main times give opposite ascendants, meaning that this time gives 8 degrees of Sagittarius, and the other time I believe gives like 8 degrees of Gemini. But either way, the point is that Pluto is going to be in either the second house or the 8th house. And in astrology, the second house, these are the two financial houses in astrology. Like, all the other houses rule other areas, but out of all of the houses here, this axis, the second 8th house axis, is the financial axis. So the second house is related to like the monetary unit, the country's currency, and income, values, and things like that, and the financial system, like the economic system. But then the 8th house is like banks and corporations and like, you know, TradFi and like insurance, taxes, all that is up here, accumulated wealth. So either way, even if the Pluto return was in the second house or in the 8th house, it's like the same story, like banking collapse, like the fiat dollar just like becoming completely obsolete is essentially like what I expect. So anyways, expecting a financial collapse, imminent. It may not happen right now, but there's a lot of stuff happening that seems to point to that direction. So anyways, the reason why I think it could happen right now is because, Venus and Mars are going to conjunct Pluto around March 2nd. So they're going to be conjuncting, transiting Pluto. Pluto, like I said, has a super slow orbit. Venus and Mars don't have very slow orbits, but the important thing here is that they're actually like moving in tandem together, which is quite strong. And so anyways, they're all going to be here at about 27 degrees of Capricorn, right on top of the natal Pluto of the US at 27 degrees of Capricorn. So that'll be on March 2nd and March 3rd. So I'm kind of like somewhat expecting some events related to the economy then. It's possible that there could be a collapse around that time. Oh, and yeah, also, not funny, but there were this date, March 2nd and March 3rd, specifically March 2nd, is very like prominent because not only do you have like these 3 planets doing like some really strong stuff here, but you also have like 2 other major conjunctions, and you have a new moon on the same day. And like new moons, like I'm sure you've all heard, like new moons are supposed to be like new beginnings or like whatever, right? But the thing is like new moons will often indicate like what's to come for the next month. That's what we really rely on in astrology, is you look at the new moon chart and then you look at like whatever it is you're interested in. And they're pretty hard to read usually, but this one is pretty prominent. And I didn't realize till today, like I've actually been watching this particular new moon just because of this for a really long time. But I didn't realize until today exactly how connected it is to the US chart specifically. So anyways, you're going to have this at 27 degrees, which seems to be like really hardcore hitting that Pluto, which is in the second house of like, the monetary unit. But then you also have this like conjunction of Mercury and Saturn at about 19 degrees of Aquarius, which seems kind of random because like, it's not really aspecting anything here, but it will. I'll show you like in a second. And then you're going to have a new moon at 12 degrees of Pisces. That's conjunct Jupiter. Jupiter here is at like 14 degrees of Pisces. Which is also incredibly odd because that's a strong new moon there. Jupiter is also like the planet of wealth and money. So this is a very like money-oriented day, I would say. So anyways, the reason why this ties in is because if you look at the progress chart, let me see if I can like quickly find it. So this is the progress chart. Now progressions, I won't go into too much detail here because there's a lot to cover, but progressions are not transits. So like I didn't really explain in the beginning, but these outer planets here are transiting planets, like as in this is the natal chart, this is what was happening when the US was like begun. So like in 1776, at the time the sun was at like 13 degrees of Cancer. So this, if this was a person, you would have said like, oh, they're a Cancer, right? But there's a whole lot more to it. So you have like sun in Cancer, then you also have moon at 26 degrees of Aquarius, and the moon moves quite a lot throughout the day, so it really depends on the time. But the point is here that the US's chart is shown here, and the transits are shown here. This is like where the planets are right now, or the celestial bodies, since Pluto is technically not a planet. But anyways, so yeah. And then if we talk about progressions, progressions are very different. So you can look into progressions more, but they're very slow moving because this isn't based on the real-time movement of planets. It's done like basically the sun moves 1 degree per year. And then all of the rest of the planets, like, they move at different speeds. The fastest moving thing in the progress chart is the moon, which moves 1 degree per month. But basically, it's a day for a year formula, meaning that if you look at an ephemery for a year, I know this is getting really confusing, but just trust me. If you look into this, progressions are much more important than transits. So, like, these things they tell a lot about what's going to happen in the US. These also tell a lot, but they tell a lot when they line up with the progressions, as well as when they line up with the original natal chart. So anyways, now here you can also see something that I talked about in this video that I would highly recommend like going back and watching just because it's relevant. But basically, in that video I talked about how like there was this progressed cycle that kept happening every time the monetary unit was changed, and it was when progressed Venus formed a negative aspect to Saturn. Like it was like clockwork. Like I mean it aligned like perfectly with every, like not perfectly, but pretty close with every single year or period of time when the monetary unit was like changed. So anyways, here you can see that Venus is actually closing in on this exact opposition with Saturn. So like Venus is at 2 degrees and 43 minutes. Saturn's at 2 degrees and 53 minutes. Saturn barely moves, but Venus does. And Pluto is square this opposition here, forming a T square. That's what like T square. And this is going to get set off by this little conjunction here. Now keep in mind the Pluto here is at 29 degrees because it's progressed. So this conjunction could affect this later on in the week. So it could be like March 5th or March 4th. But anywhere between like, I'd say February 28th to like March 6th is like a rough period of time. And the other ways that like this particular day, like so like March 2nd, or we're on March 4th here, sorry. Don't mean to be confusing, but like around March 6th, you can see like the sun will probably line up with the progressed sun at 17 degrees of Pisces, and then you can see that the moon is at 18 degrees of Aquarius, and that weird conjunction that I talked about that didn't really seem to do anything in the other natal chart is actually exactly conjuncting the moon and Mercury, and this is also being hit at the same time. So like to me, like this day that I found like very interesting, or like this new moon and then the week following it, actually seems to exactly hit the US chart. So I mean it really looks like there's going to be major changes. Like I mean this to me looks like economic collapse material, but I could be wrong, as well as like some other material too possibly. An unrelated thing that I did notice before, but I didn't like put together, I guess, till today, is that a lot of times in progressions you want to see like exact aspects. So you see how like the moon is at 18 degrees here, and it's in conjunct or like semi-sextile the sun at 17 degrees, and then the sun is in conjunct Mars, so it forms this little like exact configuration. And so like this exact configuration is interesting. It also involves Jupiter here at about 15 degrees of Cancer. And the worrisome thing is that, you know, Mars rules war in astrology. It's exactly in conjunct the sun. In conjunctions are indicative of like unexpected volatile events. So like this current Ukraine thing is very well timed with this sort of a configuration. And I had thought about doing a video on that before, but I didn't realize all of the factors. But anyways, I digress. So this is concerning right here, and it's made even more concerning by the fact that this will exactly conjunct Pluto, which is setting off this like thing that's connected to the economic collapse. And then also we have this right here, this like conjunction, which ties into something else that I find quite interesting. Let me see. Yeah. Okay. So this is Biden's chart, and oddly enough, this conjunction, as you can see, it's at like the moon is at 18 degrees of Aquarius on March 4th. 18 degrees 45 minutes, okay? And with the progressed moon, you really want it to be quite exact, but within a degree, like that's good. Like you're in the window of time right there. And the freakiest thing is that the progressed moon of the United States is going to be exactly conjunct the progressed sun of Biden on like March 2nd. Like in like right now through like March, particularly the first week of March, there's going to be a heck of a lot of activity, not only in the progressed US chart, but in the progressed chart of Biden. So the sun is the most important thing to look at in the progressed chart, and he's got his sun in conjunct Jupiter, and he's got transiting Mercury and Saturn. This same transit right here are going to conjunct his progressed sun and the US's progressed moon. So this is really, really odd, because keep in mind that the progressed moon takes like 29 years to go full circle. So the odds of having the progressed moon exactly at the same degree as Biden's sun is strange, to say the least. Another strange thing is the fact that we've got his progressed Mercury is actually opposite his natal Jupiter. Okay, where is it? Here it is. Okay. So, his natal Jupiter is at 25 degrees of 25 degrees of Cancer. Sorry. And then right opposite Cancer is the sign Capricorn. And if we go back to his progressed chart, he's got Mercury, like progressed Mercury has moved to 25 degrees. So it's opposite his his natal Jupiter, which is over here. Anyway, so that's important in progressions. But the point is like, he's got some action going on there. And then also on top of that, we're going to have the transiting conjunction of Mars and Venus hitting that around February 28th, which is interesting because also keep in mind that Mercury is the planet of communication. And then, at the same time, like on March 2nd, we're going to have Mercury conjunct Saturn hitting his sun. So it looks like it really looks like something is going to happen, like that something related to Biden is going to happen. And the freaky thing is that actually he's going to be delivering his first State of the Union speech on March 1st, which is like exactly in the window of time that we're talking about here. But because this is so like prominently connected, like the US's events, like the prominence of this is so well connected to his chart, I have to like wonder if like he's gonna say something during this speech that's like super important, or he's gonna do something. I don't know. It could be economically related. It could be related to like governance over the U.S. I don't know. It just doesn't. It looks like it's going to be important. And another interesting thing is that actually there's a trucking convoy, like a convoy of truckers, just like they did in Canada. But this convoy is going to arrive in Washington, D.C. on the same day as his first State of the Union speech, which is quite synchronous. It's quite interesting timing. So anyways, yeah, that's that. And then on top of that, this is a different topic, but it's the same week, and it's related. In the other video, this video that I keep referring to, I talked about something called the Great Conjunction. So the Great Conjunction was the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. It occurred on December 21st of 2020, and during December 21st of 2020, they administered the first COVID vaccine, as we discussed. And this was a really prominent conjunction, and a lot of astrologers were actually waiting for this particular day, because this was considered, like, widely, myself, like, by most astrologers, or like by me and many other astrologers, to be the beginning of the age of Aquarius. So, like, I don't know if any of you guys have ever heard about the age of Aquarius, but it's supposed to be like this age of enlightenment where, like, the collective consciousness is awakened and everybody realizes what the world is actually about. And, you know, like, we all kind of start, like, working together to, like, basically reach a more idealistic utopian society, you know what I mean, where we're all, like, in it for the group. But anyways, the interesting thing is that they actually did administer the vaccine on this date when we had the closest Great Conjunction to occur since 1623. So it seems kind of odd timing, because the vaccine is like a whole, we want everybody in the world to have it, like however much percentage of people or humanity has to be vaccinated, which is a very, like, collective, I guess, control thing, not really collective consciousness, or like collective control, like one world control type thing, plan for global governance type thing. So yeah, there's that. And then the reason why this is important now, though, is because back in the day, the ancient astrologers used to use the Great Conjunctions to plan for the next 20 years. And since this is the most important Great Conjunction to have occurred, essentially since 1623, it's quite prominent, and you have to look at when it's going to be quote-unquote triggered. So in astrology, something's triggered whenever you have, like, this. So basically, Venus and Mars are going to be traveling, like I said, through Capricorn. And they had one conjunction at around 16 degrees of Capricorn, but they're going to have another conjunction, like an exact conjunction of these two planets, at 0 degrees of Aquarius, which is exactly conjunct this conjunction, which wasn't actually very long ago. So this means that this will be the first trigger for the Great Conjunction since December of 2020. And so the thing is that, like, if this was when they administered the COVID vaccine, then what exactly does this, like, what's going to happen here on March 6th, or March 5th through March 6th? It looks like there's going to be, like, some sort of a follow-up on whatever this, like, plan is here, or, like, you know, whatever the activities or events are in relation to COVID. So, I mean, it's possible that there could be, like, new news related to, like, the effects of COVID vaccinations, or that there could be other news that may not even relate to COVID at all, that has to do with, like, the whole plan, you know what I mean? The plan. But anyways, yeah, that's happening on March 5th through 6th, and it's pretty concerning because, I mean, to have, like, another conjunction of two planets, like, hitting this exact in such a close period of time, while you also have, like, this stuff going on, is odd. And then also, the worst part is that, like, you got Mars and Venus conjunct Pluto, which is the planet of, like, destruction, catastrophe, and death, all together here. So yeah, this is a really concerning period of time, and especially with, like, Chernobyl and, like, the whole nuclear thing. You just have to worry about stuff, and so I'm just saying that, like, if you can, try to stay home on this date. You know, don't go take any risks, and I guess be wary of the news. Like, if you hear some stuff and you feel like you may need to, like, leave wherever you are, or go to a different country or something, then you should probably follow your feeling, because this is a very prominent thing to be happening. Now, it may not be some like catastrophic world event, but it might be something's gonna come up, I would think, in relation, like I said, to like the whole plan and like COVID, as well as like governance over like the world and stuff. And also another point I really quickly want to make, is that when I talked about like how this is the Pluto return and everything, in this other video, I talked about how like the Wealth of Nations, which was a book written by Adam Smith, was like kind of one of the foundation materials for like, or one of the books that kind of summed up the traditional economy up until now, at least. So this conjunction, because that book was written in 1776, The Wealth of Nations was written in 1776, which is pretty freaky. This means that if you did a chart for the book itself, it would have the same Pluto, meaning that we're going to have like a Pluto return of the US and also a Pluto return of a book related, like that basically outlined the current economy, or the old version of the like economy. So since Pluto returns indicate like the end of empires as well as like death and stuff like that, you kind of have to wonder if like it kind of symbolizes that the old economy is dying, like with this Pluto return, because it's not just impacting the US, it's impacting like sort of like the concept of the old economy itself. So another thing is also like this whole like Pluto return fear mongering thing isn't just like fear mongering. Like the Pluto returns, they have been like synonymous with a lot of like other huge events that happened in like other empires and countries. So like a lot of other countries, like the Holy Roman Empire and England, if you go back and look through their Pluto returns in like the 20 years, or like the 10 years before and the 10 years after the Pluto return, over that period of time, like the whole empire completely changed. And it was often through like a lot of upheaval and like war, and like catastrophe, as well as like changes of control, because Pluto rules control. It rules power, power dynamics, power struggles. It rules like war, destruction, and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, you can't underestimate what Pluto could do. So it's possible that we may enter some wars, and or big war. So anyways, yeah. But I'm just saying that like the economy could potentially change, not just for the U.S. Like I'm talking about like the world economy. Like I think we're moving to crypto, personally. And another reason why I do think that that's possible is because, as you can see, this is the second house, and that represents like finance and income in the monetary unit. And it starts in the sign Capricorn, which is like the most traditional finance sign of the zodiac. Like if you had to pick one sign that was like, embodied the values of traditional finance, it's Capricorn. And then if you had to pick one sign that ruled crypto, which it actually does rule crypto, is Aquarius. So as Pluto has like done its whole thing here, and now that it's like moving into Aquarius, and we're gonna have like another trigger for the age of Aquarius, I have to think that like, like this was the first half of the US's like life cycle, I guess, and then this is the second half. So it looks like there could be changes possibly to control over the US, and like I said, Pluto returns have been associated with the end of empires, so I mean, like, you just have to be wary of the possible manifestations of that. And yeah, that's essentially it about the US chart for now, or at least for March. But like March, like February 28th, specifically March 1st, March 2nd, through to March 5th and 6th are like really heavy period of time. There's a lot of stuff like pointing to events. So yeah. And then another thing is that in Biden's chart, which ties into like the concern over the beginning of March, is the fact that he's not gonna have. Yeah, here it is. All right. On November 19th of 2021, there was an eclipse at 27 degrees of Taurus, right here. Sorry. So that eclipse was exactly opposite his sun. So the thing is that whenever there is a conjunction or an opposition, or even a square that's within 1 degree of a like monarch's or a president's like sun or moon or ascendant, so like sun, moon, or ascendant,
It can signify a weakening.
So the fact that we had this like eclipse that was literally exactly the same degree as his sun in November is very concerning. Anyways, another thing that's concerning that kind of like adds to that is the fact that, wait, where is it? Too many charts, guys. Okay, oh yeah. So ancient astrologers, they used to use the and astrologers today, they would use the vernal equinox, which is basically when the sun enters, the time when the sun enters Pisces. So that's like considered to be the astrological new year, right? So as you can see here, the sun is at like 29 degrees 57 minutes of Pisces, but it's right about to enter Aries. So that's like the astrological new year. And then you set that chart for the location of the place that you're considering. So anyways, the point is that in the chart you're going to want to look at like what major aspects are happening, like what major squares are happening, are there any concerning squares, etc., etc. And the most concerning square for sure out of this year was the square between Saturn at 10 degrees of Aquarius to Uranus at 8 degrees of Taurus. And the reason why it's concerning now is that like this was the beginning of the year, so like the vernal equinox, it's used to like basically predict the rest of the year until the next vernal equinox. Now the next vernal equinox isn't until like later March of like 2021. You know what I mean? But like later in the month, like around the 20th. I have to check. But anyways, so like we're still under this vernal equinox right now, or under the rulership of this one. And the reason why this month, February and March, was important is because we had this square between Saturn and Uranus. And this square is also very significant of like the whole move into crypto, because like Uranus going through Taurus is a very like crypto-oriented move of finance, but I'll go into that in a different video. And the reason why it's important in February is because we had a new moon that was conjunct this Saturn. So that was the first trigger throughout this entire year that exactly hit one of these points. So this also basically gives more evidence to like the stuff that I was talking about with Biden, about like how his chart is like really weak, or at least it looks concerning here with the whole like eclipse hitting his sun, because actually the meaning of these things, like the meaning of Saturn square Uranus, is basically, like I wrote some notes on it. Saturn representing authority figures and the government appropriately falls in the 12th house of disillusionment and dissipation. Uranus representing unexpected events as well as crypto falls in the 2nd house of the finances and the monetary unit. So the first time it will be contacted will be on the February 1st new moon. So February, March, we may see U.S. government or authority figures showing weakness or resignation of members. Great changes advocated related to health regulation, finance, economy, administration, which may be resisted or achieved. Danger of loss of power or popularity of the U.S. government with the general populace or other nations. Issues related to crime, prisons, maladministration. Fluctuations, losses in money matters, stocks, banks, investments, monetary unit, and business affairs may reflect negatively on the government. Obstacles, delays, differences, obstruct the passage of legislation. Ill-considered legislation causes difficulties, friends lost, enemies made. Injustice or unpopular changes and reforms, danger of strikes or rioting. Issues related to power grids, the internet, crypto. And so like the whole cyber attack thing, that is also very concerning, because like that's totally in line with this as well. So yeah, you guys definitely, like, if you have the means, probably buy some gold and some crypto. I wouldn't keep any dollars personally right now. This is like the worst month, astrologically speaking, to keep dollars, probably since like the creation of the United States. So anyways, yeah, crypto seems, I believe that crypto is going to be the new currency. It's hard to say what to put your money in, but gold has been like quite stable um, throughout like this last couple months when compared with like other assets. Now, we did touch this a little bit. I'm just going to make sure that I'm not missing anything here. But I think we're good.
Alright, so thank you guys for watching. I'm gonna put the link for my new YouTube channel in the description. But yeah, stay safe, everybody. Have a great day.